After finishing a trip in Cambodia, it was time to head for Laos to discover a dirty little secret that America hid from the world. What was that secret, you ask? Well, my friend, in this video, you're going to find out. So are you ready to join me on the wildest adventure you've ever seen? Over 2,400 kilometers from southern Paksay all the way to the northern remote mountain ranges, where we'll track down old forgotten CIA bases in Laos's remote jungles.
This has to be. Look at the old stonework.
Meet people who lived through it all. And learn about ethnic tribes that were trained as special forces to fight a secret war that spanned a decade and left Laos as the most bombed country per capita in human history.
Alright, so it's about 9:20, we're just about to head off on our journey on the road. Need to go get some money out first. Today, we're heading to coordinates. Ooh, mysterious. And you'll find out why in a moment, so let's head off.
Well, it was day one of our trip in Laos. The idea was to follow a road to nowhere, random GPS coordinates I'd found online on history forums, to old artifacts left behind from a secret war. But these ones would be particularly interesting because they weren't exactly left behind. You'll find out why when we get there. This was the first point of the journey, and my mission that day was to hotfoot it to Suanaket, where the first ever CIA operative would set foot in this land, to start something that would become the blueprint for all modern CIA operations that run today. So we set off down the roads, thinking we were ready for what lay ahead. But I could have never predicted or been prepared for what lay ahead of me.
Sabadi! I'll tie rope, damn it. Oh, okay. Tie rope. Okay. Tie rope, die. Well, we've arrived at this bridge. It's now gone. I'll explain why in a minute. Oh my god. เข้าใจอะไรเลย ไปเอาดูอันนี้เพราะว่าสะพานหมดแล้วใบทำอะไรที่นี่มาดูด้วย It looks like the bridge is very popular here. We've come to all see the bridge. Look at us all taking photos. Hello. Oh my god. This is the best day ever. So why did we come to some random coordinates on the map in the middle of nowhere where we can't even get past? Well, if you didn't know, Laos was a country that had 8 bombs dropped every single minute.
And clearly I didn't know either, or I'd forgot. It was equal to a plane load of bombs every 8 minutes, 24 hours a day, for 9 years.
In a civil war, part of the Vietnam War, where the CIA ran a secret war here. And this is one of the bridges that has sunk into the water due to the large bombing campaign that was released upon Laos to try and stop the Ho Chi Minh Trail from supplying North Vietnamese troops. So now begins the start of our journey, all based around the CIA's secret war in Laos. And this is the first spot.
Well, it was time to head across the river, but not before we could say goodbye.
ไม่รู้แค่ใบบนเรือนะครับ แค่เอาใบบนเรือดูสนุกมากฮอน
My first day in Laos was looking to be an adventurous one. I was just about to cross my first ever river raft, and on the other side was a treat waiting to greet me. A good luck wish from some locals, which I didn't understand until I got a bit further down the road. Having never done trails in my life, This was a crazy new experience for me.
Oh, bloody hell.
I felt like Indiana Jones. I'd just crossed a river with my motorbike, and on the other side was ravines I had to cross, crazy dirt tracks that had been washed away by the rain, and mad bridges that had no safety railings and holes in the floor. But I was honestly loving it. The adrenaline-filled adventure I always yearned for was in front of me.
Fuck.
And I was staring it in the face at the most arduous starting line. Anyway, we'd finish up here, and I'd get to Tarmac, hot-footing it to Suanaket. An extra 5 hours on nice paved roads. For Laos, that is.
Okay, we've arrived in Suanaket. We're staying here. Anyway, I'll probably spend a day or so here, and then we're going to head off again. Now, Suanaket is interesting, but you'll find out why. Next. See you in a bit. In 1959, the CIA would send one man, Bill Lair, with one mission, to come and train ethnic tribes as special forces to fight a secret war here in Laos against communist forces. A operation that would see over $3.1 billion in aid over the course of its lifespan. And just across the Mekong River, where its base would be, where pretty much all of the operations would run from. Now, we're off on a journey, 2,000 kilometers on Baby Sai over there, to go look at the remnants of that old history, to go see the old downed helicopters, the bombs, all of the old CIA bases and things like that. So let's go do it, eh? I'm excited. And you should be too.
The plan was to make it for Sepon, an old village that was part of a huge operation that tried to dismantle the Ho Chi Minh Trail that we'd learn about a little bit later. Unfortunately, Baby Sai was starting to show her signs of old age, and we'd have some issues that needed fixing.
My charging has stopped working.
The wires had somehow come undone on the battery or burned, and my electrics weren't working. So it was vital to get it seen, as my phone battery is questionable, and it's my main GPS device. Anyway, on the way here we'd find an old downed helicopter. Something that we'd learn about later would be part of the operation, and would be one of a staggering number that were blown out of the sky. And after seeing the remains, it was time to search for a bomb crater. The original reason I had gone to Sepon was for this exact bomb crater. And fortunately, yes, I said that right, I couldn't find it. So I had to ask around for help. Well, luck would strike, and it would just so happen that I would run into a bomb disposal crew who would not only direct me to a bomb crater, but something far more interesting I hadn't realised was right under my nose the whole time.
สบายดีมีคำถามเข้าใจภาษาไทยบ่ได้เข้าใจโอเคใต้หินแถวนี้มีคุ้มระเบิดนี่ทางเข้ามาอยู่3แยกนี่3แยกอยู่พุ่นที่เป็นเศษระเบิดสมัยสงครามอันนี้มาจากระเบิดอุ้ยสงครามหมดเลยว้าวแล้วก็คุ้มระเบิดอยู่วัดตรงนั้นอยู่วัดใต้ตัวนี้เป็นวัดเหนือวัดใต้อ๋อสิมีเป็นคุ้มใหญ่คุ้มอยู่เซปอนใหม่เพราะว่ามีระเบิดไหม
แม่นเซปอนเก่าตัวนี้มีระเบิดที่พ่อแม่ประชาชนเนี่ยที่เหลืออยู่บ้านนี่คือเล่นมาเกิดสงครามเลยง่ายไปอยู่ทำอยู่ผู้ฟังคุณผู้หลังจากแดดสงครามเลยจังกลับขึ้นมาอยู่บ้าน
After being given the tour of the northern temple, I headed to the southern one, where I'd find the bomb crater and a monk who was eager to show me some stuff. And I would find something out so fascinating that it blew my mind.
Hello. Oh, these poor little doggies might have died. Oh dear. Oh. Wee. And here are all the scars of the temple that used to remain. Parts of the temple just completely destroyed. Wow. จำได้ไหม อยู่ที่นี่
อยู่ที่นี่
อยู่ที่นี่เมื่อระเบิด
เมื่อ
จำได้ไหม
จำได้อยู่ผู้
โอ้
สงครามอยู่ผู้
โอ้ย
มาแล้วมันสงบแล้วลงมา
อ่า
ออกมาแล้วนี่แล้วก็ยังแม่พญานุรักษ์ไว้เบื้องเดียวนี่เดี๋ยวก่อนเบ้ย
โอ้
ลายก็นี่ทำนี่เลยนี่เจ็บพูด
อ๋อในแม่น้ำ
แม่น้ำ
ที่กลับอยู่แม่น้
เออ
ำว้าว ไม่ดีเลย
ไม่ดีเลย
ปฏิบัติธรรมไม่ได้
ปฏิบัติธรรมไม่ได้ปฏิบัติธรรมอยู่ผู้ปฏิบัติธรรมอยู่ผู้
ปฏิบัติธรรมอยู่ผู้โอ้ว้ายน่าสนใจขอบคุณขอบใจหลายๆที่อธิบายผม ยินดีที่ได้รู้จักครับ ขอบใจหลายๆ Here in 1971, this peaceful river would have been a battleground. Operation Lam Song. The idea was to cut off the Ho Chi Minh Trail. That would be one of the only parts of the trail that would allow motorized vehicles through to northern Vietnamese communist forces to replenish them. So, they launched a full-scale attack with 36,000 on the American side and around 35 to 36,000 on the Viet Minh side. And it left 10,000 dead. Not only did it do that, it displaced an entire village. The village that we're in now, Old Sepon, moved to New Sepon over there. And the remnants remain here, with the blown up temple. You can see here is where the temple used to be, and just over there is the newly built temple, or the part of the temple that remains.
I left this village with a feeling of difficulty. Men and women caught up in wars over ideologies and flags that are made up. I thought to myself, why? What's the point in it all? I'm not sure, but unfortunately, I think we're destined to repeat it throughout time. Anyway, it was time to rest for the night and to continue my journey the next day, where I'd find a huge museum for the exact Operation Lamson that we'd seen the day before. Loads of cool stuff could be seen here. Guns, helicopters, mad communist monuments. It was like a childhood dream.
Well, ain't that nice? Bye-bye. Now there's peace. The kids can run around and play and make videos and things like that. And that's a beautiful thing.
After this, we'd set off on the road in search of a cave that I was told was part of the wall. Now this route told me it would only take 3 hours. Well, to put it shortly, that was a complete lie. As I went down the roads, I saw so many beautiful sights. And the roads were pretty great until we'd get to a turn-off we'd go down where the roads would just get worse and worse and worse. As I went down the trail, there was a sign I spotted that took me down a road I wasn't initially supposed to go down. But I had to see it.
หมู่บ้านคลองแกส้น Bloody hell, so we're here in the village where Gason, I don't know if I'm saying that right, would live. The man who would come from the shadows to lead the Pathet Lao who won the civil war against the Royal Lao government and took over the country. And now the flag you see today flown in Laos is the Pathet Lao flag. And this is where he lived. Gason. Wow. Oh my lord. Huh. Wow. That's what I'm doing, man. There's his old medals. And there he is. Which one is he? I can't tell. There's a bunch of them. There you go, Gason. Donating some Gason. Who would have ever thought that this boy that lived here would become the man that is all over the notes in Laos and to run the country? Wow, what a beautiful place to grow up. Ngam. Ngam lai.
Ngam.
Ngam lai. Okay. ขอบใจหลายๆ
Okay.
ยินดีที่ได้รู้จักครับ
We were now on the road to our first CIA base, The arduous, long journey had been difficult so far, but something would make it worse. And something I had been worrying about the whole time would happen.
We've got a puncture. We're in the middle of nowhere. The sun's about to go down, and it's about 40 kilometers to the nearest hotel, apparently. And we're driving on roads like this. Well, I'm gonna have to get on. I'm gonna have to change my first tyre. I've never fucking done this before. Let's go. Oh, fuck. I might seriously be fucked in this situation. There's no way I'm going to be able to do this myself. It's a good job I broke down in the village. Right, I'm going to walk up to that village.
5 minutes. You walk.
Oh, done by Hanathi.
Yeah.
5 minutes. You speak English very well, man. How long have you learned for?
3.
3 years?
3 months.
3 months?
By myself.
Wow.
อีกประมาณ200 กิโล
200 กิโล
โอเค
200 เมตร
200 เมตร
200 กิโล
200 กิโลบ่ได้
Right.
Arriving 20 minutes later, my friend from earlier was there waiting for me. He helped explain my situation and get my wheel fixed before heading off again. With some chats from the locals and an exchange of some beers, my puncture was finally fixed. But now I knew I had to do the same roads in the dark again. I was just hoping another puncture wouldn't happen on the way. Here ensued 2 hours of very slow, low visibility driving, with possible sheer drops on either side and incredibly difficult terrain. My feet got soaked, caked in mud, and my petrol and spirits were running low.
แค่นี้มีโรงแรมไหมอ๋อ
ทางเล่น
อ๋อครึ่งกิโลokay. I'm in a town. Real roads. Oh my god. Yes, man. That took me the entire day. I did not expect that. Please. Oh, it's a place I can sleep. Yes.
But what I didn't know was luckily, here at this guest house, I would find my first travel companion.
Good morning. We stayed the night in this horrible $6 guest house. Stains all over the walls. Can't really complain for $6. Got aircon, everything. Today we're going off to a place where there might be an old shelter from the Vietnam War, and then off to Mui Gia Pass, and then we're going to make our way over to Tak Ek. So the time is 8:08 right now. Let's get some breakfast and get on the road.
I have the same one.
You do?
Yeah,
Where?
yeah. But I don't know inside.
No way.
I will show you. But I don't know how to use it.
You don't know how to use it?
Yeah.
Oh man, it's so easy to use.
You can teach me like
You just point and shit, you know?
Please teach me how to.
I will.
How to do it.
Yeah, let's go get some breakfast, man. It's funny to meet you.
Yeah, I really.
I'm a firm believer in the fact that if you travel the right path, life just unfolds in front of you. You meet the right people at the right time when you need it the most. I checked into that guest house the night before, noticed the motorcycle, and thought to myself, I hope I can meet whoever that is tomorrow. Well, would you believe it? I slept over my alarm, and it just so happens that we woke and packed our motorcycles at the same time and could meet. Is it fate, or is it laziness? I prefer fate because it makes me look less like a lazy piece of shit. Anyway, I'm glad I crossed paths with this man, because I did at a time when I needed advice.
He's a 64-year-old Korean man called Sunki, doing adventurous travel like this with an exceptionally infectious personality and laugh. Anyway, we set off for the caves, arriving in about 20 minutes, only to find they were closed to visit properly. Unfortunately, the Vietnam stuff wasn't available to see either, but the girl told us it was there during hot season, and we could trek down and see the caves if we wanted, but couldn't go in. So we did just that. You know, all of this stuff makes me feel like Indiana Jones.
Me too.
Whoa! Oh my God! The scale of that is immense. I don't think the camera does that justice, but oh wow.
We set off from the caves, arriving at old disused trail roads again. I was heading to Laos and Pak San to get closer to a particular base I'd wanted to find, and we had a roughly similar route, so we travelled the same path for the rest of the day. Off we drove together down crazy roads, and with rain on the horizon, they would be about to get crazier. After driving for a bit, we shortly arrived at another bombed out bridge, having to get the ferry across the river, and also having to pay the foreigner tax.
So we've definitely just had to pay the foreigner tax. She says Sao Pan, and then he comes along and he goes, nah, I want 10,000 more. Sip Pan, and I'm like, why? He said, this is boss number 1, and this is boss number 2.
Okay.
Boss number 1 pays 20,000, and boss number 2 gets 10.
As we got off at the other side, we'd both take a fall. Sunki first, and then me shortly after.
That's just broken right off. Oh man, these roads are awful. I've fallen over once. Luckily, didn't get hurt.
Getting up and dusting ourselves off, we went further down the roads, uncovering stunning beauty on the way. The mountain ranges through these drives were absolute bliss, and it almost felt like Lord of the Rings. Anyway, we'd finally make it to Tarmac, where we'd say goodbye, having a final meal together, riding on, and with a little fist bump, parting ways. My plan would slightly change that day because of the rain, and I would end up doing something by accident.
So the plan changed because it rained today. I did not want to go up horrible roads again and be stuck in the dark, so we came to Takek instead. Now we're here.
After arriving, I rested here for the night. I woke up to some of the most tantalising adventure I could have hoped for. Broken bungee cords and a phone mount hunt. Now these proved wildly difficult to find, and I went to 4 or 5 shops until finding them. Then it was time for a small service for baby Sai, where I'd find real silver.
I went over a speed bump earlier, and I went over the bit that fell off. Look at the karma I get.
As with the days before, it was just an early start to set off late again. But fear not, the day would be bliss, with beautiful paved roads, because I was on something very touristy that I sort of wanted to avoid, entirely by accident. I was making my way for Laxao to get closer to Pak San and Longqiang for some very interesting things you'll find out about later. Now the Takek loop was alright. Nice paved roads, nice views and shops to stock up every couple of kilometres. But honestly, if you want adventure, I'd recommend just renting a motorbike and picking a random place on the map and going there. It will be better. Anyway, after, we arrived in Laxao, where I'd find the cheapest and most beautiful guest house I've ever stayed in, where I'd rest for a few days, wash some clothes, then make my way to Pak San. Now the next part of our journey was to head for a CIA base that, unbeknownst to me, was in the middle of nowhere and would be my most difficult challenge yet.
Alright, time is 7:57 now, just packed everything up, about to leave this hotel room. Gonna go get some breakfast and then we're heading off to the old CIA base today, up horrible roads. So, these vans are going to be even more brown by the time we're finished. Let's go. Didn't think this fruit would be the one.
I set off, only having a small breakfast of dragon fruit and buying 1 bottle of water. A mistake I would regret later. The sights down these roads were incredibly beautiful, and I was thoroughly enjoying the day, truly living out my dreams. Until I got stuck in the bog. This being the first time I'd ever been stuck in a bog, I tried to use brute force and ended up pulling my back. So now, with quite a bit of pain, I had to lug 125 kgs of metal out of the thick mud, then pushed on, arriving at a village to stock up on some more water, where I was told a 300cc engine was necessary to complete these trails.
300 120หาไม่ได้ difficult.
I pushed on regardless, taking on some of the most difficult roads I've ever done, getting stuck, then getting help from more locals that told me I should turn back. I had come this far. I wasn't turning back. About 3 hours after I'd left the village, I had drained through my water supply to 500 millilitres left. I was caked in sweat and my muscles beginning to cramp. First my right arm, then my left arm, then my right leg and my left leg, until it got to the point where my hands were clenched shut. Now I am a little bit embarrassed about this, but I'd like to keep this film authentic. Last time this happened to me, I had a seizure, and although drugs were in my system before, I panicked at the thought of that and hit the emergency on my phone. I feel like a bit of a dick for doing this, but luckily it didn't go through because there was no signal. So I took a breath, realised I was on my own, and pushed on. My next task was to try and find anyone I could buy water from. I hadn't seen anyone on these roads for hours, and I was saving my small supplies for a potential night of camping. Not sure if I had enough, but thinking I would at least survive a horrible night of dehydration and hunger before cracking on again. I tried as many huts as I could find, but no one was home. It was getting close to sunset, and it was starting to look more and more like I would need to camp by myself. I couldn't find anyone for about half an hour to an hour, until I spotted a motorcycle on the side of the road.
ขอบใจเลย 10 กิโล
10 กิโล18 กิโลในฮอดละ
10 กิโลโอเค
เจ้าหมานทางหันทางคือลายหันน่ะคือลายโรดแต่ว่านี่ทางดีละ
I saw this bike as I was coming up because my hands started cramping up, and when my hands start cramping up that's not a good sign. And I saw this bike and I thought, oh my god, there's people, please let me ask them something. And they shared their meal with me, and they told me there's a village up there. Honestly, I was thinking like, shit, I might actually die here. Ow man.
ไปแล้วเดี๋ยวสิไปหุ้นไปแล้วขอบใจละ
ขอบใจเลยขอบใจยินดีที่ได้รู้จักครับ
I could relax after that. I knew there would be a place I could at least get water at the end of 10 kilometres. Now you might think 10 kilometres is just a short ride, but in conditions like this, it can take a very long time. I had to take the bike across rivers, helping locals do the same.
ขอบใจเลย
Driving some of the most muddiest, most remote roads possible, crossing bridges that would stretch raging rivers, supported by nothing but some cables.
That is insane. That view, man. Oh my god. This has made this all worth it. Just this alone.
Eventually, just before sundown, I would arrive at the next village, 40 kilometers away from my original destination. But in a way, I had arrived at just the right place, in just the right time.
รู้สึกสนุกมากมากมากโอ้มีอาหารมีน้ำโอเคเอาน้ำ2 ขวดนะครับ yeah.
Realizing I wasn't going to make it to a place to stay for the night, I asked them if there was anywhere I could put my tent down. They looked at each other, somewhat confused with the question, and then finally said, "You can stay here." And as I was putting my tent down, I'd gather quite a crowd.
สบายดี
This family belonged to the ethnic tribe of Hmong, the people I'd wanted to meet all this time, and here a village still existed not even 10 kilometers away from the CIA base I had set out to visit that day. Unfortunately, I'd never find it, and it must have been ruined by the sands of time. But what I would find was a home for the night. Not just a place to stay, a family who I'd converse with late into the night, who would ask me questions with a curious eagerness, and I would ask back with the very same. A family who fed me traditional Hmong food, and a village who accepted me there for the night, played sports with me, and included me in their culture, not just as an outsider, but almost as one of their own.
Check out that morning view, eh? Bloody hell. Isn't that beautiful?
I woke up that morning, tired and grateful, but a little worried about the conditions ahead. It had rained the night before, and a wise man once told me, the night before that is, that if it rains a lot, you can't get in or out of this village, sometimes for days. Fortunately, they assured me today was not that day. So I said my goodbyes to my new Hmong family, and I set off, ready to finish the leftovers from the previous day.
This is my breakfast. Dry.
40 kilometers of the most remote, beautiful roads I'd ever driven in my life.
Whew.
Insanely beautiful views, mountainous terrain and rocks that could kick your wheel out at any given moment. I was roughly 10 kilometers away from the CIA base I wanted to reach the day before. But unfortunately, with no GPS on my phone, there was no way I was going to find it. The surrounding villages here must have been home to some of the most well-trained guerrilla fighters in the Laotian Civil War, the Hmong. And as I drove off, it hit me that a few of those people I met in those villages the night before may have fought 50 years ago. Now there are only a few Hmong warriors left in Laos, because once the communists took control, those Hmong families who fought would have to traverse harsh jungle terrain to reach borders like Thailand or Cambodia, to flee an almost unmistakable punishment, free education camps or labour camps. Most of those who were caught never left these camps, and most who took the journey died during the journey. I was now about to make the journey to the most secret CIA base in the whole of the Civil War, home to 50,000 of the ethnic Hmong tribe. Now, only home to 3,000.
Oh my god. This is it. The former airfield that would host the most secret base that would house most of the Hmong, the ethnic tribe who would fight against the Pathet Lao. The Pathet Lao flag is now here. Obviously the Pathet Lao won, and Lao is now Lao because of, yeah, the Pathet Lao. But here Vang Pao would organise a huge amount of forces, of Hmong forces, to fight a guerrilla battle.
3 major battles happened here in a spot dubbed Skyline Ridge, standing 3,100 feet of elevation above sea level. Something we'll learn about a little later, and the horrific bombing and tragic falling of men trying to mount the ridge. And also something we might almost do later on. Hint hint, nudge nudge. First, there are a couple of interesting points I wanted to see. An old house of the Hmong tribe leader who died in exile, another secret base left to rot, and some mini games. Don't mind if I do.
Look what we found. Found a little bowls set. Boy, look at that in the distance. Just imagine over those ridges, Air America planes coming down and landing here with supplies, Hmong soldiers coming to collect them. Wow, what a different time it would have been back in 1959 is when it started. I don't know when the base opened, but I would imagine the 1960s. So here we are inside the grounds of Vang Pao's old house. The man would be tasked with forming a Hmong army, and the Hmong were notorious for fighting each other, the different tribes of Hmong that didn't like each other. So it was actually a very hard task to unite them as one. Now, when the communists won, Vang Pao had to flee in exile to America, but he famously didn't want to leave his brothers and sisters behind. But he was persuaded, I think by Bill Lair, to go back to America to continue the fight. Well, he ended up dying there. And yeah, that is what it is today. This must have been it. It's got to have been. No way. Wow. This has to be. Look at the old stonework. And they got a goal here for kids to play football at night. This is... oh, this is wicked. ขอโทษนะครับมีคำถามอันนี้เป็นสมัยสงครามบ่
โดยแม่น
แม่นอ๋อ
อันนี้เป็นห้องหมอเก้า
ห้องหมอเก้าโอเคน่าสนใจอันนี้เป็น
ทำไมเก็ดมา
I'd done everything I wanted to see, apart from the treacherous Skyline Ridge. But that was for tomorrow, after some rest at a guest house, with a lady who would tell me about the horrors the war left behind.
แล้วเพื่อนแล้วมันยังดีอยู่แล้วเป็นซับ
ยังมีอยู่ที่นี่
มี
โอ้
มีหลาย
อุ้ย
สมัยสงครามล่ะอเมริกาล่ะทิมระเบิดหลายเยอะ
The Americans dropped over 2 million tons of ordnance on Laos, making it the most heavily bombed country per capita in history. Much of this bombing focused on major battles such as the Battle for Skyline Ridge in Longqing and the Plain of Jars, which we'll see later, and Skyline Ridge sooner than later. Anyway, it was time to head off for Skyline Ridge by total accident, because Google would send me down an old disused road that was the very road that would lead to Skyline Ridge. I set off for Skyline Ridge, driving on nicely paved roads, which would all of a sudden turn into steep switchbacks with gravel, rocks and huge inclines, something which my 125 was not enjoying. These would be the least of my worries for the day, as when I got to the top, After taking in the beautiful views, Google Maps told me to turn off left down an old road that I would come to find that even none of the locals use anymore. This was the crescendo, the scariest, steepest trails I'd seen. It virtually wasn't road. It was grass patches, slabs of moss-covered rock face that sent me spinning around once, but after the first warning, I decided it was a good idea to keep going. Huge rocks to kick out the wheel into large crevices eroded by rain and flash floods, and steep corners with sheer drops either side. It was like nothing I'd encountered before. This was professional level stuff, and I was here doing it on a 125 with only about 20 days of experience on trails. As I got further in, my breathing got deeper and more regulated to calm myself as I inched down each gravel section slowly, hoping I wouldn't slip. I kept saying to myself, it's okay, I can handle this, until I went crashing down into a ditch. Although I didn't know it at the time, this would be a blessing. I now had approximately an hour until heavy rains came and this became flood territory. Now I had to pull out my bike from a tree in a ditch I'd fallen into, on an incredibly steep incline, with virtually no grip on my shoes due to gravel slipping.
Oh shit. No. Hold up. If I can get it turned round, that might work. Oh, yes, 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 yes. Push, get up. Yeah. It's down. This was a very stupid idea. Just imagine if I'd gone any further. I would have not made that out.
So what happened on Skyline Ridge, and why was it so important that I made it there?
If the Vietnamese could get to Long Chien, they could get to Vientiane and storm the capital. So they sent 27,000 troops up this ridge to fight a force of only 4,000 Hmong and Thai. That's a 1-to-6 ratio. Over 10,000 Vietnamese died, and over half the Hmong fighting force died, and many died in brutal hand-to-hand combat where they'd gut each other with Bowie knives and beat each other to death. Well, this ridge was never taken.
After making it out of that situation, I would head back to the town to try and ask about the roads. The man at the guest house was insistent there was only one road until the next day, when he remembered the small turnoff. I would try and find another way out of the town that day, but I got reined in.
I am so glad I got off that road.
And was offered tea by a nice old lady who originally came from India. Then as it got later in the day, I decided it was best to stay another night, to tackle the roads ahead and maybe replan the journey.
ไปแม่กินข้าวน่ะกินข้าวอยู่เลยแม่นี่น่ะ
Okay.
ไปกินน้ำนองเลยเนี่ย
ขอบใจอันนี้อะไรหมู
สิ้นหมู
ชีหมูอ๋อ
จะได้กินข้าวอร่อยไหม
อร่อย
อร่อยไหม
อร่อย
Oh.
อันนี้อร่อยไม่ทุกสิ่งอร่อย
ตัวหมูอุดอร่อยเลยกิน กินให้อิ่มเลยจะมีแห้ง
ขอบใจอะไร ยินดีที่ได้รู้จัก
โอ้ที่ไปแล้ววะ
สุข
ไป
ดี
เอาเข้าใจ
เดิ
เด้
น
อ
ทางปลอดภัยเด้อ
เดินทางปลอดภัยคอยไป
ให้พ
เด้อ
รพุทธสวรรค์เด้อวันนี้เด้อ
นอนคนสวัสดิ์แล้วโทรมาบอกเมย์นะเด้อ
บอกแม่ สบายดี
เดินทางปลอดภัย
ขอบใจ I might need it.
I set off from the guest house and was ready to tackle the road to Puncture, climbing the previous hills from the previous day again. Eventually, we passed a village I'd been wanting to see, which was used as a refugee camp after the war to house fleeing Hmong who were making their journey to neighbouring countries. But a bit late, and worrying about the weather conditions, I didn't dare to stop. Again, we found ourselves in the middle of nowhere, on trail gravel roads, tackling some difficult inclines that my sewing machine moped engine wasn't really up to the task of.
Probably not the best thing to do in flip-flops. Oh my god.
Ladies and gentlemen, I present you a single big rock.
Seriously, a tiny little rock can f*** it up like that so much. No! Right, we're in a bit of a situation again. That is just like, put your foot in that and it's just a sinkhole. Ain't no way you're getting out of that. And I thought, you know, there's fucking tracks here. Good idea. Nope, it wasn't. Look at this, fucking mud. Brother. I don't really know how I'm going to get this out, but I think I'm just going to have to pull it from the back and go that way. And it's raining now, which is great.
After successfully removing my bike from the bog, I carried on until I reached a small village tucked away in between two mountains. This place was one of the more picturesque places I've been to in Laos. Incredibly beautiful mountain ranges, green pastures, streams with kids playing in them. It was starting to get close to sunset, so I set off to tackle the final section of road. Huge mud baths, great big rocks and landslides. It was an adventurous dream. Finally, I arrived at Puncture on paved roads, bought some mangosteens to celebrate my arduous journey through it all, then rested for the night here, ready to go explore.
Alright, let's go to the Plain of Jars. I'm actually not going to lie to you, I really can't be bothered to go, but I'm going to go, because I'm only here once. And I'll be disappointed if I don't see the big stones in the field. Will I? I don't know. I probably will. I'm going to go. I'm going to go. I'm going to go. Let's go.
It was time to set off for the Plain of Jars. But not because they're a UNESCO heritage site or anything. Let's be honest, I probably wouldn't have gone unless there was something to do with war there. They do say that every man is at least somewhere on the autistic spectrum, eh? I arrived at the big stones, paid my ticket, and then promptly made mates with the driver, who sat me in the front seat with him, to and from the site. How cool am I, eh? Then, upon arriving, I had a look around at the marvellous wonder that had laid here for centuries. It's not only survived just the sands of time, but also a 3 million ton bombing campaign, of which 30% was dropped on this very Plain of Jars.
The bombing runs almost never stopped here. And of the 150,000 people that used to live here, at the end of 1960, only 9,000 remained. That is crazy. And here are the jars. Check them out.
Anyway, after seeing the jars, I made some Hmong friends on the plane and left to take a look at the other sites. Visiting these sites was quite interesting, to say the least. All the employees selling tickets were blind drunk, and it turns out they were celebrating a funeral, something which is a kind of oddity in the Western mind. Celebration and a funeral. I got invited to attend and drink, but I refused their offers for beer as I didn't want to drive drunk. They were playing incredibly obnoxious, happy hardcore beats, playing games and drinking loads.
Someone's died. This is how they do funerals here.
It was pretty interesting to see the cultural differences in how people mourn their loved ones. And to be honest, I think I kind of prefer Asia's version. Anyway, looking to get away from the almost definite drunk driving fines, I set off back to my hotel, where Babyside would get a well-needed wash. Would you look at that? And we'd have a rest before heading to Samnur. I rode off and ended up in an interesting village just outside Samnur. At this time of year, there are an incredible amount of parties happening all over, music blasting, people carrying crates of alcohol between shops, and people getting very drunk. I wondered what it was for, and then I learned that it was Vietnam's Independence Day. In 1945, on the 2nd of September, Vietnam would finally declare a very short-lived independence at Ba Dinh Square in Hanoi. And interestingly, people all over Laos celebrate this too, which I found strange considering it's not an independence that they gained until 1953. But maybe they thought it like dominoes, in the same way the CIA thought Asia falling to communism was like dominoes. As soon as one gets independence, it might not be long until the others will. After this, I arrived in Samnur to a nice guest house, and I decided to stay for 3 days to drive to the Vietnam border, see the secret city of Pathet Lao caves that they used as their headquarters, and the secret base that was only 90 kilometers away from the communists' headquarters, Lima Site 85, a CIA site that would become more interesting as we progressed in this journey. You'll find out why, my friend.
Now I want to explain why we came to Pulpati, why we came to Samnur, because just over there is the first ever communist president's caves where he lived. It's a headquarters for the Pathet Lao in Samnur, was the main headquarters. And just over there in the mountains, there was a secret CIA base that they didn't know about until much later, when a battle occurred.
Well, I'd finally arrive at the caves, but they were closing for the day. So I said I only wanted to see a single cave. And they told me I could go see the number one, the president's, the one I wanted to see, Dan Gason ni Pomivane's cave, without a guide, which I was very happy about. So I paid up my 70k kip. They turned on the lights for me, and I took a look around at what the communists would have called the capital of the liberated zone for years, until finally storming Vientiane in 1975. They would have first lived here in caves, in these conditions, without much, having to farm under cover of darkness so they wouldn't be killed by bombs, and using the cave system as bomb shelters from the raids. There was a whole network of tunnels here, with rooms for meetings, medical care, etc. It was pretty wild to see what humans are capable of dealing with when we have a greater cause that we all believe in. Anyway, I finished up here and headed for the guest house, because there's no way I'd make it up the mountain that night. So another night in Samnur to tackle the secret mountain base the very next day. Up the mountain I went on my trusty steed, which would struggle with every steep incline and tiny rock in its path. But regardless of that, we pushed on, passing further and further up, seeing amazing views, and literally passing up through the clouds. I guess we were on cloud 9, eh? After all the crazy driving, and thinking about how I might have to do this on a bicycle soon, I arrived at the top, where I would find the real Stairway to Heaven. We're not doing that.
Somebody bought. ดิอ๋อบางทีเซ็นชื่อ
เส้นชื่อ
มาคนเดียววะ
มาคนเดียว
เอาสาวมาได้ไหม
เอาผู้สาว อาจากเอาผู้สาว
Now, this is one of the only CIA bases where you have to pay for a ticket. So I joked around with the owners as they all looked around at each other, figuring out how much a foreigner might pay.
ราคาฝรั่งใช่ไหมครับ
Then they told me, as much as you think it's worth. So I paid up and would be escorted by, from what I understand, who is a member of the Lao army, who would soon become my friend. And now we send each other voice notes on Facebook, which is pretty cool. The stairs felt endless, but determined to make my motorcycle jacket smell even more horrible, I soldiered up the steps, sweating profusely in full gear. Boy, was it worth it.
Yeah! Oh my lord. And we've still got the old artillery placements here, looking down that valley. Machine gun post. Look at that. The old remnants of the rotor blades of a helicopter just here, left in the jungle, rotting. There's probably so much more undiscovered. Oh, you could spend your life journeying through this land and finding cool things like that. Oh my god.
On the way down, I made some new mates who wanted pictures. Got to the bottom of the stairs and said my final goodbyes to my new Lao army mate. I was about to make the journey back down the mountain, and he wished me good luck. But the wish may or may not have been granted, depending on how you look at it, as we'd have our first higher speed crash, being a dickhead trying to take the corners as fast as possible.
Bloody hell, well that's my first crash ever. At least I wasn't going too fast. Oh, thank fuck this thing's here. And thank fuck it wasn't on another corner. I guess we gotta get the bike out.
Now, adrenaline is a funny thing. I wasn't fazed at all. Nothing hurt. I stood up instantly and thought, okay, I gotta get my bike out of the ditch. Well, luckily, someone stopped to help, and we pulled it out together.
Problem, the front brake's locked on.
I went to jump on the bike to continue riding, and now it wouldn't move. With my complete lack of knowledge in fixing motorcycles, I decided it was best to wait for someone to help. Well, luck would strike like a Lucky Strike cigarette, and I would cool some people down. The first two weren't able to help, but as luck would have it, a mechanic stopped to check it over. Well, it turns out the mudguard had been pushed into the wheel. So he helped me to remove the mudguard, gave it to me, and said to get it refitted at the shop below. So I thanked him for stopping, paid him 100,000 kip, which was probably a bit too much. But I was forever grateful he took the time out of his day to stop and help someone that he didn't have to. Once we were able to ride again, I rode to Samnur, got the bike fixed, and then rode about an extra 80 to 100 kilometers to get closer to Muang Hiam, where I'd find the final secret CIA base boss in Laos. There might be another bonus one, maybe. Just telling a friend.
Right, I've stopped here because there is a CIA base close by that I want to go see. It's a 32-kilometer road, but the road is awful. So I'm going to go check the roads out. If the roads are awful, then I'm not going to do it. If the roads are okay, then I'm going to go do it. Right, I've changed my mind. We're going to stay here. I'm going to check into a guest house. I'm going to chuck my bags in the guest house, take some water and some food, and we're going to go without the bags. We're going to do it. I came to see it. Let's see it.
So we set off on the trails with only 2 to 3 hours left of daylight. This should have taken me only about 3 hours and 15 minutes to do, which gave me just enough for a little exploration when we got there. I'd have to be quick. After an hour, we finally made it to the village. I continued to ride on in search of the old artifacts left behind by the Americans, but I couldn't find them, so I asked one of the locals, and he ran and got his phone for me and showed me that I should use satellite to follow a very thin road to see the old bombs, guns and relics left behind. So we now had about 20 minutes left on the clock to find this stuff, using satellite to follow old roads that just aren't even on maps.
This is the old airfield. I came here before, but I just went back and I asked. So this was the old airfield, and he said these used to be tanks that would hold the oil for the planes or the helicopters to take off and supply Lima's site, 85 Pupati. Wow. Hello. That's cool.
Now this airfield is extremely interesting because it would have housed Air America planes, helicopters and food, goods and munitions for the war efforts, and would supply the very base we visited before at Pupati in this episode. This made me a very happy man, but I had bigger prizes to find, which we would successfully find with a little help from some friends.
Oh my god. We found it. It's 4:30 as well. It's 4:33. We're a little bit over schedule, but look at what we found. Oh my god. In the middle of the jungle just here. And look, we've got another one. Wow, that must be an old tractor. Can't believe I'm so excited over a tractor. Bo hen, you nai? Bun yai? Oh, thang ni. We had to walk the rest. We found it. Yes. 40, 50, 60 years old, used by ethnic Hmong troops to fight against the communists. All right, we better get going. It's 1:15.
I couldn't have been more ecstatic here. Everything I studied the past years, the language, the history, etc., it had all aligned perfectly in this moment. The Hmong who would fight here on bases just like this would later flee to refugee camps across in Thailand, and we would make that same journey in their footsteps. From here, I made my way for rest in Vang, where I do a load of tourist stuff, no editing or work, and just enjoy myself with some of the best company I've had in a while. I will dearly remember those people.
Je déteste. Je déteste. Yes, I know what it means. It means I hate. Je déteste.
After about a week, I'd make my way back to Thailand, where I'd have my final crash crossing the Friendship Bridge. I got up, dusted myself off, and rode to the border where the pain kicked in. Having to stand in line, sort out documents, and get through customs in a fair bit of pain. When I got across the border, some ibuprofen, alcohol wipes, and a plaster would patch up my tiny graze. But it would be nothing compared to what those who fought communism had to endure. Long, arduous treks through jungle terrain to escape imprisonment in camps, which many never left. 3 million people in total from Laos and Vietnam combined fled to bordering countries like Thailand. 200,000 of those would be Hmong, and 44,000 of that 3 million would flee right here to the border town Nong Khai in Thailand, where one of the largest refugee camps that would house them would have been here on these very grounds that you're seeing on screen now. Now a technical college. Many who fled through Laos didn't ever make it, and if they arrived at the Mekong, they would have to wade through the river while being brutally shot at by Pathet Lao forces. Anyway, after this gruesome story, it was time to make it for Udon Thani, to see the final location I had been wanting to finally finish this mammoth trip. Ramasan CIA camp, the main headquarters for the entirety of the covert operations in Laos during the Civil War.
I cannot describe to you how cool this is.
A camp only recently opened to the public in 2019 as a tourist attraction, but it appears it has still just been left to rot. A stark reminder of the lack of awareness and interest in a war that the US president himself, President Kennedy, would spend more time on his first 2 years in office than he did on the much more known battlefield of Vietnam. And that's where we're headed next, my friends. For now, I was in my second home again, and in good company.